Hashtag GTV Breakfast. My name is Day. My guest is a sophisticated savage, an incomist, an African futurist, and the CEO of Pidgen Music, associated with acts as diverse as One Love, The Kobolo, Akable, Kwaokesi, Rockstone, and a whole lot more. Panji, Anoff, welcome to the Yellow Couch. Good to have you here, man.
Good to be here, Kafui. Always nice to talk with you.
What does Panji mean?
Well, actually, Panji is a Zambian name. So I was named after President Kaunda's son. The day I was born, President Kaunda had, like a typical African head of state, sent his children to school abroad. So, this has been happening since I was born in 1967. Foolish African leaders, instead of developing their schools, they send their children to school abroad. So on the day I was born, President Kaunda had sent his son. So we know President Kaunda was quite a progressive man. But when it came to education, he still thought, no, let me send him to the colonial master's country. The colonial master can educate my child better than I can myself. So my parents, on the day I was born, my parents saw in the newspaper, Panji Kaunda arrives to start some expensive school in England. And my parents said, well, 2 Africans arrived in London on the same day. So they named me after Kaunda's son. So, because I was born in London, I mean, if the story didn't make sense. So this happened in London. So my parents hadn't decided, they didn't have a name for me yet.
And they gave you Panji?
Then they gave me Panji.
And what happened to that Panji?
Well, he was quite a notorious human being. He was involved in some political scandals. I think he even died in a helicopter crash. I'm not sure.
Are you a notorious person? I mean, the first 1 or 2 minutes, you've thrown some nice, calm salvos. Are you notorious?
I don't think I am notorious, but if I'm notorious, then perhaps I'm notorious for saying what I think or what I feel at that time. And what I said yesterday, I may say something different today, and I will say it with the same vim. But because what I believed yesterday, I might have discovered something to the alternative. So long as I feel something, I will say it with confidence.
Okay.
Even though it doesn't mean I won't change my mind tomorrow. There are thousands of things that I was passionate about, and I changed my mind with time, and I realized I was wrong, or there was a better way to look at the situation.
We'll look at some of those things before we finish the conversation. But yesterday when I was preparing this conversation, I was chatting with my sons. I have 3 sons. And I was telling that, look, I have a guest, one person who is or has done script writing. He's been a school teacher. He's been a stage manager. He's been a studio rat. He's been a sound engineer. He's been a fixer. He's been a filmmaker. He's been a musician. He's been a cameraman. He's been a roadie. He's been a promoter. He's been an impresario. He's been a line producer. He's been an executive producer. 14 different things. Which of these, and you were a journalist too, but we'll talk about that later, but which of these career paths have found you most joy and excitement?
Well, I have to admit, I have changed as I have grown. So until about the age of 21 or 22, being a Ghanaian, you have to be a doctor, a lawyer, or an engineer, and so I chose engineer, and I actually spent 4 years studying mechanical engineering. But as I was approaching finishing my degree, I realized that I wasn't interested in engineering, actually. I was interested in completely different things. I came to realize that I was an artist. And to his credit, my tutor at university, in my first year, he called me one day and said, "Oh, Mr. Anoff, tonight I'm going to take you out for a drink. Let's go sit down, have a beer." And when he took me out, he told me, "Look, Mr. Anoff, my friend is the head of the English department. I've spoken to him. You can transfer to the English department. They are not even going to penalize you. You don't have to repeat the year. You can transfer to the English department." And I said, what am I going to do in the English department? And he said, "Look, Mr. Anoff, if I had your use of language, I wouldn't be wasting my time here in the engineering department."
Engineers don't need bluffing.
Yes, I mean it's
calculations, right?
yeah, it's so to him, and I said, "Well, you are an Englishman, so you can take pride in English and being able to use English. It makes sense to you, but I'm a Ghanaian. I'm not going to go back to Ghana and, when they ask me what did I go and learn in England, I say, I went to learn English." So I was offended that my tutor would tell me I should stop doing engineering and go and do English. But as time went along and I started writing for my university newspaper and magazine, and I started immersing myself in writing, I realized I'm not an engineer. So it was shortly, I mean, if I had stayed another year, I would have graduated, and everybody said, oh, finish your engineering degree so you have something to fall back on.
But you didn't finish it?
No, I said I'm not going, I don't want to fall back on anything. If I have something to fall back on, I will not go where I will not move forward like I need to do. So I was very sure I didn't want to fall back on engineering.
And you ended up in the BBC.
Yes.
And you were once an investigative journalist.
Well,
you went undercover.
Yes, I went undercover, you know, but part of the reason why I left the BBC after, let's say, a year and a half, actually I won a scholarship, a training scholarship. And
what were you doing there?
Well, I had a training scholarship. I was allowed to understudy anybody or any department that I wanted. Okay. I'm the first and the last person ever to receive that scholarship. After me, they never gave it to anybody else. I don't know whether that is bad or good, but I'm the first and last person to receive a scholarship where they gave a person who had a little bit of a journalistic background, but an opportunity to work in any department. So I chose live television, I chose documentaries, I chose radio. So basically any department that I went into, they would train me, they would do whatever they wanted. And I mean, after that, I continued working for the BBC for a while. But I did an undercover story where I was working as an early morning cleaner in the Ministry of Defense. So as an early morning cleaner who was being paid, I think, about £1 an hour, I had access to the British government's military secrets. So I filmed them, and the story I wanted to tell is that because of government cuts, the only people who will do early morning cleaning in the Ministry of Defense is illegal workers. Nobody who has papers will do that job. So I was trying to tell the story that on the one hand, the British government is making cuts, and then on the other hand, they are blaming the illegal workers for doing certain jobs that no British person wants to do. So basically by making cuts, they are threatening themselves, or they are endangering themselves. And that's the story I wanted to tell.
So you were a spy?
Well, I mean, yes, of course you are undercover. I mean, in order to let people know that there is something wrong somewhere, you have to expose them to it.
So you see what Anoff and all these other investigators.
Yes, I was doing Anoff kind of things 30 years ago.
Years ago.
And that is why I like Anoff so much. I mean, I really admire how he has been able to take that genre and, you know, make it into something truly socially significant here in Ghana.
Okay.
So
so that chapter ended. But how did you enter into music? Because you've done other things, and then you became Pidgen Music CEO. You
know, music has been my passion since I was very young. When I was 8, 9, 10 years old, my brother and I had a band, but because I played the bass and it wasn't a proper bass guitar, I had to sit closest to the tape recorder, which we would record ourselves. So I played the quietest instrument, which was an acoustic guitar. You know, there's a piano, there's drums, people shouting. So I had to stay close to the tape recorder. So I was always the one who was recording. And, you know, that started, I mean, I recorded grown men's demos when I was 11, 12, 13, 14 years old. Wow. And so I've always been involved in music somehow. And actually part of the reason why I stopped working for the BBC and I started writing full-time was so that I would have more time to concentrate on music.
What kind of music did you go into in the beginning?
Well, I mean, you know, right from the early 90s, I was interested in applying the hip-hop production technique or the hip-hop aesthetic to African music. Because even though it is not very obvious to us because we are Africans, when white people look at hip-hop, all they see is Africa. You know, everything about hip-hop is African. It's like, they don't call it music, they call it a beat. Give me a beat. Oh, I heard this guy rapping over this beat. You know, and that beat is a drum beat. With hip-hop, it's the drums that matter. Of course, every other things matter, but hip-hop allowed music to focus back onto the African aesthetic. Drums and voices is African music to a great extent. Sure, there are other instruments, but if you say there's some music with drums and voices, it's African music. Definitely. And then suddenly hip-hop came along, And I was recognizing African music in hip-hop, and I wanted to use what I recognized in hip-hop to apply to what I knew of Ghanaian music. You know, so, I mean, this is an experiment I've been trying to do this since the 80s, into the 90s, you know. So in the early 90s, which is when I worked with Reggie, so that's before I came back to Ghana.
Rockstone?
Reggie Rockstone,
okay.
Yes.
What kind of work did you do with him?
Well, I mean, we're doing hip-hop music. I wanted to do African hip-hop music, but in the early 90s, Reggie had a very successful career in London as a rapper, but as a rapper whose mother is American. Reggie's mother is American. So British people, just like we Ghanaians, when rap came, hey, you have to, the slangs is what makes rap. That changed later when Black Twang and people started rapping in London English.
So back then he was rapping in American English?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
When did the tree thing come?
The tree thing came in the mid-90s. But 93, I came back to Ghana because I wanted to work with people who would use tree, who would use Pidgen, who would use indigenous languages.
Reggie didn't want to use it back then, or he couldn't?
He couldn't, because, you know, if a successful American rapper suddenly starts speaking tree, you understand what I mean? Come on, it's not going to, you're going to lose the business you have. So Reggie was able to switch to tree when he came back to Ghana for good. Basically, now I've left my career in London behind. You know, so everybody who knows Reggie from the early 90s in London, they'll say the American rapper, you know, because that is what, and they were very successful. I mean, they opened for many groups, but Reggie wasn't going to give that up to pursue my dream of adding Chuboy and Zamanamana, you know, adding indigenous Ghanaian things. Yes, we couldn't add the Ghanaian stuff to what we were doing in London. So I came back to Ghana to continue adding Ghanaian stuff to what I was doing.
And who did you work with in the beginning?
In the beginning, I worked with Talking Drums. I worked with B.B. Menson.
Radio Gold.
Radio Gold.
Yeah.
Actually, I mean, so B.B. Menson was rapping in Airway in 93, you know.
I've never heard any of his Airway stuff before.
In fact, B.B. Menson never forgave me because I recorded B.B. Menson, Abeku, Ribeiro, and Kweku Tutu on the Back Home Again soundtrack. So Back Home Again came out in 94. But we have recorded the soundtrack like in 93 or, you know. So on that soundtrack, when at the end of the film, Abeku's verse plays, Kweku T's verse plays, but before B.B. Menson's verse plays, the film ends. So, you know, it's, B.B. never forgave me, but I guess I didn't know that the whole song wouldn't fit onto the movie soundtrack. So those are the first rappers I worked with really, is Kweku Tutu, Abeku Ribeiro, and B.B. Menson.
Okay.
So, I mean, that
was this Hiplife back then? Was it called Hiplife back then?
The Hiplife name didn't come till a little bit later.
Okay.
The Hiplife name came around the time Talking Drums did the Adding video, which would have been sometime in 1994.
Okay.
You know, and the Hiplife word simply came about because I knew hip-hop wasn't going to resonate with Ghanaians, you know, and as a journalist, I understood that in order for something to work, you need, it's like every editor, what's the headline, you know, what's the byline. So I had come from working as an editor, so I knew we needed the headline, and I knew
Hiplife was going to work.
Yeah.
Who invented that word? There's a whole lot of controversy around it. Who brought that word up, Hiplife?
Okay, I don't know who invented the word, but I was using it in 93, 94.
Okay.
And it is, you know, it's a kind of word which is created by journalists.
Okay.
You know, because journalists need something to describe something.
You need a hook
yes.
and something to describe.
Yes. So I was coming from the world where I know a journalist gives him a hook.
Indeed.
So if I'm talking about Talking Drums, I'll give you the hook you need. Come on, don't forget, in Ghana, most of the time, we write a press release. We give it to the journalist puts their name at the bottom of it and collects money from me and his newspaper. Come on. You know, this is how it, I mean, that, to some extent, it has always worked like that. You know.
And then, so we bring it all the way to now, where the whole music scene in Ghana is. What are your thoughts on it in terms of we putting Ghanaian elements into it? There are those who say, Charlie, the whole music sounds too Nigerian. We're not putting our Ghanaian-ness into it. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that as Ghanaians, as Africans, for the most part, we have failed to acknowledge the strength, the power, the beauty that is in us. There are many reasons for it. You go to school, no vernacular. So how do you express yourself if you haven't learned English yet? Right? And you know, when Bob Marley said, brainwash education to make I the fool, hatred your reward for our love. You know, this is the situation we see here. So for me, you know, when Hiplife started, not even when Hiplife started, 10 years ago, there are Ghanaians who, if they want to rap, they feel they have to put slangs inside before the rap sounds genuine. You understand what I mean? Those are the same people who now, if they are singing Afrobeat, they feel they have to put Nigerianisms in it to make it sound genuine. It's idiocy. You know, anytime you create a work of art, use your own language.
So it won't make you hear more Pidgen.
See, as I left Ghana 95, then myself I feel say, okay, Hiplife, Pidgen, like when I was working with B.B. Menson, Aigbe here. Aigbe is a very language. Incredible for hip hop. Yes, Begbeshos language. Yes, that's the right word. You know, so
where you know the here?
I know the here. Where I know the here Ghana. You know, I grew up in Burma Camp. In Burma Camp, there's no Ghana. So even though I lived in Accra for 25 or 30 years of my life, 15 of those years was in Burma Camp, where I never had Ghana.
Why don't you speak with Ghana for?
How much? The government said, army. How much are you paying me to go and die? Inya. And it's sensible. You know, I mean, I have no respect for anybody who becomes a soldier. My father was a soldier.
You don't respect your daddy?
I respect him because my father became a soldier because he was afraid if he went into the civil service, his background or his father's political aspirations or whatever would interfere with his progress. So he joined the army because he knows the army is a place where people usually are promoted by merit. And my father joined the army as a doctor. He was a pediatrician. He's a children's doctor. So he joined the army to look after the army officers' children. But when I see somebody who says, I'm going to join the army to go and kill people, what do you join the army for? To defend. Defend by doing what? How do you defend? By killing. So we, the government of Ghana, we have decided that we are going to take some people and train them how to kill. Meanwhile, we have said, thou shalt not kill. Murder is wrong in our country. But we are training a group of people to do everything that we believe is wrong.
So how will you defend the country if people, they attack us?
I didn't say we do not need an army. Army, however, should be something which is historically, an army has formed when an army was needed. So if we are under attack, hey, every man, get up, go and bring your cutlass. We are going to war.
It's like a volunteer kind of thing. So
yes, we are fighting for ourselves. Okay. Yes,
not to have a core of people ready to.
No, because when those people are ready to fight and there's no war, what do? They go home and they take the war to their wife and their children. They take the war to their mothers. They take the war to their families. That's what they do. Come on, let's not lie about it. Everybody, you take your job home. When you're talking to your children, you interview them because that is what you do. Everybody takes their job home. So when you have tens of thousands of people or thousands of people trained to kill and there's nobody for them to kill, what do? They
do escort duties for the banks because armed robbers were attacking the banks, and now we have military escorts. We are using the army.
Well, if we do have an army, then we should use them all the time. Let's give them work to do. Let's keep them busy. I do not know any arm of the Ghana government that is more efficient and more well organized than the Ghana army. So that one, I give them credit.
We have to use them more.
We have to use them more, yes. Everybody knows that if police stop you by the roadside, Charlie, it's money they are coming to jack you for. The soldiers, they are doing a disciplined job. You know, you cannot compare the Ghana army to Ghana police, excuse me to say. You understand? You cannot compare. Look at a Ghana army car, which is 10 years old, and look at a Ghana police car, which is 5 years old. There is no comparison between them. Do you ever see any raggedy Ghana army cars driving around? No, they look after them.
Why is that?
They maintain them.
Why is that perception that the police are not as disciplined as the soldiers?
Because it's true. Are the politicians as disciplined as the soldiers? No, they are not. So there are different levels of discipline in different levels of society.
Let's talk about society now, because your Twitter timeline is very interesting. You have thoughts on a lot of things, and you retweet a lot of things which I believe you associate with. The last thing I saw was you wondering why the MPs are worried that their visas are going to be revoked because of their stance on the LGBTQ plus, anti-LGBTQ plus bill.
Well, I mean, this is a simple matter. If you, as an MP, believe that in Ghana we should criminalize anything, if you say we should criminalize wearing suriname, then you shouldn't go to the country where suriname is legal.
Where suriname is what, earrings?
Yes, when men wearing earrings, okay. Yes. In Ghana, there is no law against suriname now, but there could be. So what I'm saying is, here, now we have a huge issue, say LGBT. So some politicians or some MPs have decided that they want to criminalize some other people for a crime, for a victimless crime. You know, Kafi, if I love you and you love me, it doesn't affect anybody in this room. You understand what I mean? And the thing which I find most confusing about LGBTQ is the people who are most vociferous. If a man comes to me and he says he loves me and he wants to sleep with me, and I say, oh, you know, actually, I don't want to sleep with you. You know, sleeping with men is not, or in fact, I don't want to love a man, you know. So, yes. Isn't that the end of the matter? So why are we afraid of men who like men? It tells you a lot about us. Any man who is afraid of men who like men is afraid of himself. I won't mention any names, but look at some of the people who are pushing this LGBT bill. Study them very carefully. Look at them carefully. And if there's somebody you think, Akwaiwe, they are a very effeminate power, you see it is them. They're afraid of themselves. They are not afraid of me. They are not afraid of you. They are afraid of themselves. Why do I want to pass a law which says that I, Panji, cannot love you, Kafui? How do I benefit from it? If I don't love you, does it mean I will love somebody else? No. So the moment I see human beings, especially the church, look at all the homeless people in Ghana. The church has never said, oh, you know what? The Pentecost church is coming together with the Methodist church and the Anglican church. We are going to come together and feed all the homeless people in Ghana. The church has never said that. Look, there are people who have been, they were in hospital, they can't pay their hospital bill, they are prisoners in the hospital. You see some of them doing menial jobs, they'll be working in the hospital until they can go and free them. I've never heard the churches say, oh, those people who cannot pay their hospital bills, we the churches are going to come together to pay their hospital bills for them. People who can't pay school fees. I've never heard the churches say, all the Ghanaians who can't pay school fees, we are going to pay their school fees for them. In fact, if you go and tell your pastor you need money for school fees, will he give you money? Hell no, he'll pray for you. But all of a sudden, the churches say, we will pay the cost of prosecuting and imprisoning LGBT people. Why? Come on. Church, why don't you pay for the cost of prosecuting the politicians who are stealing the money of the people? Why won't the church do that? Because they benefit from it. The church has no problem with stealing, so long as you bring them some. The church has no problem with 419, so long as you bring them some.
So for you see it as just rank hypocrisy?
This is the most this is the most disappointed I have ever been by my Ghanaian brothers and sisters. Ghana is a tolerant country. In my entire life, the thing that made me most proud to be a Ghanaian is tolerance. We tolerate each other. You understand what I mean? Do what makes you happy, and leave me to do what makes me happy. Look, in Ghana, you can be in your house blasting your music. Nobody will come and tell you, hey, turn your music down. Go and live in Europe. You can't play your music. If your neighbor can hear your music, he has the right to come and tell you to turn down your music. If you are in the street dancing and being happy, nobody will come and tell you, hey, you can't do this here. Ghanaians, we are tolerant people.
What's changed?
Religion is what has changed. Religion has made us intolerant. Why? Listen, the question I want Ghanaians to ask themselves, the colonial government, they didn't give us good government. They didn't build good infrastructure. They didn't care about us. So the education they gave us, is it to our benefit or their benefit? You see, Ghanaians, because when we've gone to school small, we think we are better than everybody else who hasn't gone to school. We are not actually studying. It's like what I was taught at school. Has it made me into a fool or has it made me smarter?
How do you mean?
1 + 1. Kafui, are you married?
I am.
You are 1. Your wife is 1. Do you sometimes say, me and my wife are 1?
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
So 1 + 1 can be 1.
1. Can be 2. Can be 3.
You have 3 boys.
3 boys.
So 1 + 1 is 5.
Could be 5.
Yes. So in you, the case of Kafui, we have 1 + 1 is 1. We have 1 + 1 is 2. We have 1 + 1 is 3 when your first son was born. 1 + 1 is 4 when your second son was born. 1 + 1 is 5 when your third son was born. So 1 + 1 is 5. So if we as human beings understand 1 + 1 is 5, we will collaborate. We will work together. We will achieve things. But because they've taught us 1 + 1 is 2, and why did they want to teach us 1 + 1 is 2? Our ancestors didn't believe 1 + 1 is 2. If I believe 1 + 1 is 2, I will never work with you. Because I will work with you, we will get to, then we will share it, you have 1, I'll have 1. So what's the point of collaborating? Because collaborating is hard work. For you, collaborating is hard work for me. Anytime you work with somebody, there will be some compromises. But those compromises are tiny compared to the benefits. 1 + 1 is 10. Kafui, let's go and work. We work together, we get 10. Cheat me, take 6. I still end up with 4. If I worked on my own, I would have 1. Because you worked with me, you have 6. I have 4. So why don't we collaborate? Why don't we work together? Because we are stupid enough to believe 1 + 1 is 2. This is a simple fundamental problem. It doesn't affect us alone. It affects many people. But the war which was waged against us has been waged against others. Come on, Europe used to be the church owned all the land in Europe. And they turned the people into slaves. And the people fought back. Now in Europe, you cannot bring religion into schools. You cannot bring religion into churches, which are state-run, because the state is secular. Ghana is a secular state.
Do you still believe it's secular?
I believe Ghana is secular. Ghana is secular by constitution.
But is it in reality?
Ghana is non-secular by stupidity. But by law and by constitution, it is secular. You see, what happened is, those of us who are not Christians and those of us who are not Muslims, we were tolerant because we are still Ghanaians. So when somebody says, oh, we want to pray before this thing, we say, okay, Charlie, go ahead and pray. It's not a problem. I don't mind if you're a Christian. I don't mind if you're a Muslim. All I care is how you treat me. But then the Christian, you say, oh, you are not a Christian, you are going to hell. You are a Muslim, you are going to hell. You are this, you are that. So we are tolerant.
Who is we?
The non-Christians, the non-Muslims. If we had not been tolerant, Christianity would never have found a foothold.
You identify yourself with a non. So what are you? How do you identify yourself?
I'm a Ghanaian. I'm a Ghanaian. There is, people always ask, am I a Christian or a Muslim?
How do you worship? Do you worship?
I work. What do I worship? I worship every human being I meet.
Okay.
You, for instance, I love you more than Jesus. I love you more than Muhammad. I know you. You and I have spent time together. We have done things together. I cherish the human being you are. Sometimes when I have jobs, I call you because I know when you come, you will do a good job for me. Right? And I know you have a sense of friendship and loyalty that if I've given you a job to do, you will not let me down. I trust you for that. I love you. That's why I like you. You are my friend. I don't know Jesus from anywhere. Who is Jesus? Why should I love that guy? Who? For what? When you are here, you are here, you are here. I'm surrounded by God's children. So why do I want to go and chase the one from some time ago who his everything cries, Basa. They say his mother is a virgin. Come on. And they say you're before. How can a virgin give birth? Come on. You know, sometimes they educate us to make us stupid. And we don't realize it.
So you think it's, we are confused? Most people are confused.
No.
Is that what you think?
All those of us who have been educated, we are more foolish than we were before we went to school. We are more foolish than we were.
What's the solution?
We have to transform our educational system.
How do you start?
Well, first of all, the starting is to remove everything which is faith-based from an educational system which is science-based. Right? You don't combine faith and science together. Because faith is not based on human observation. It's not based on empirical fact. It is not based on anything we have seen. So we should not mix the two together. We must separate them.
Separate the faith
Separate the faith from the science, yes. And let's focus on science and leave the faith for people's homes.
So faith should be individual, and science is how our education should be.
Our education should be science-based only. Keep your faith in your house.
Keep your faith in your house.
Yes.
I don't want to keep the messages on the platform, so I'm going to throw a few questions at you.
Okay.
I'm here with Panji. Anoff is a man of many parts. One of those parts is CEO of Pidgen Music, but he has different things, and he speaks a lot on issues happening in the...
And I speak by heart, so if you don't like it, turn off.
Hi, Panji. Are you saying, will you accept LGBTQIA plus in Ghana? And do you believe in culture and tradition? It's a double part WAEC kind of question.
You see, will I accept it? Who am I to accept it? Are you asking me, will I practice? That's a different matter. That is my choice. What do I mean, will I accept it? If my son comes to tell me, oh, I love this person, is it for me to accept? It's not. It doesn't concern me. It's not my business what people do. Look, but me, I have a serious problem in Ghana. We are raping young girls. We are impregnating them. When a 12-year-old is pregnant, they will say, oh, a 12-year-old is pregnant. Who is the father? The father is not a 12 or 13-year-old boy. It's a fully grown adult. Let us deal with those matters. I don't have any problem with two people who love each other and do me no harm. I have a problem with the people who are harming society, who are harming young children. Ghana's biggest problem is heterosexual rape, underage rape. Do you know that? What would you say if you are asked, Ghana, our society, what is our biggest problem? The ladies mentioned this morning. When they find somebody raping somebody, instead of going to the police, say, oh, same way, and then the person gets off. We make no attempt to prosecute people who rape women or underage children. We make no attempt.
So you think the focus is misplaced?
Let us focus on violent crimes. Rape is a violent crime. There is a victim. Where there is no victim, there is no crime.
What do you make of the arguments that a lot of the HIV cases are coming from men sleeping with men, and so they're actually trying to protect them with this bill?
Look,
with a long name.
Statistically, we know that is nonsense. However, myself personally, I believe HIV is a harmless virus. AIDS is a deadly disease, but HIV is a harmless virus. I'm not the first person to say this. The reason why Thabo Mbeki lost his job as the president of South Africa was because he spent $50 million doing research, and the conclusion those scientists came to is that there is no link between HIV and AIDS. The most comprehensive research done in the history of the world was done in South Africa by Thabo Mbeki, and he had the courage to come out and say, the findings of my scientists are as follows.
But why are people dying of AIDS?
Okay.
There's no link between HIV and AIDS?
I do not believe so.
Okay. I can't even question that because, but I want to go on.
But however, I can tell you what all the people who are dying of AIDS have in common. Hemophiliacs, antibiotics. Prostitutes, antibiotics. Tuberculosis, antibiotics. So what they have in common is antibiotics. Every time you get a blood transfusion, they give you a huge dose of antibiotics to stop your body from rejecting the blood, because by default your body will actually reject the blood. So what do I believe the cause of AIDS is? Antibiotics. The name itself tells you. So I remember in the 80s, there was a hotel in Tesano run by a madam, and she told me, Abombelet, Ekum Miguel's. She said this in 1980. 1980, nobody knew what AIDS was.
She thought that the antibiotics were killing her girls.
Yes. Because instead of the girls taking the traditional medicine, they started taking antibiotics every day because you don't want to give your customers gonorrhea. So what they call, the prostitutes were some of the first people to start taking prophylactic antibiotics. All of them died. They all died. So prophylactic antibiotics will kill you.
I wish I could continue with this conversation, but I just want to wrap it up a little bit with a couple of thoughts from you. A couple of years ago, you posted that you were gay. And then later on, we found out that it was an experiment you were doing to
It wasn't,
to find out who were your friends. Was that the whole deal?
No. It wasn't an experiment. However, I made that statement because, sometimes how do you express to people what you feel or what you believe? You understand what I mean? And in my teens, in my early 20s, I was very homophobic. In my, let's say, in my early 20s, I suddenly started to realize, if I say that I'm going to exclude 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people from my life because of who they love, who is the fool? It's me that is the fool. This person hasn't said they want to be my boyfriend. They already have their boyfriend. However, we can work together. There are things we can do together. This guy is a nice guy. You understand what I mean? When things come to a crunch, he's there for me. Like you. You understand? The way I like you, Kafi, if you were gay, would I say, hey, Kafi is not my friend anymore? For what? Who loses, me or you? I am the one who loses. If you, for instance, do you understand what? So it got to a point in my life, I realized, by being prejudiced, I'm actually
cutting yourself off from
I'm cutting myself off from a vibrant part of the world.
So you became more accepting.
Yes, for my own benefit.
Is it because of the field you're in? You're in the arts and entertainment, and the perception is that a lot of homosexual and gay people flourish in that environment. Is it your environment that changed your mind?
My friends, there is no environment. Every single environment. It is just that society has forced people to hide and pretend they are people who they are not. That in itself offends me. Why should a human being pretend to be something that they are not? Forget those who go to church. As for them, they have chosen to pretend to be something that they are not. Nobody forced them. You understand what I mean? But when society forces you to pretend to be something that you are not, that means society is at fault.
Let's end on a hopeful note. Do you have hope for Ghanaian society with the way we're going, and maybe even to a wider extent Africa?
I have incredible hope, not only for Ghana, but for everybody. And the reason is simple. All it takes to transform this situation we are in is a change of awareness and a change of consciousness. It can happen in 1 second. Until the internet and mobile phones and social media came along, you had to print things and circulate them. It was going to take a long time. So then I had very little hope. But today, that something can go viral and cross the entire world in the space of 2 or 3 hours, and everybody can access that information. I believe the likelihood of a transformation coming is not only much higher than ever. When it comes, it will happen faster than ever. And don't forget, there are many incredible things happening now. One, the dollar is dying. Peter Tosh sang the day the dollar died in 1976 or 1977.
Prophecy is coming true.
We thought he was a madman, but when Peter Tosh sang the day the dollar died, even me, who was a Peter Tosh fan, I have to admit that song made me think, I go too far. But it's just because I couldn't understand what he was saying.
What's the good news in that, quickly? Why
the good news in that is that things we thought could never change are changing.
Okay.
Yes. So, and for us, we the human beings, who are actually the cause of the vast majority of the problems, all we need to change is a change in consciousness, a change in awareness. So it can happen before the end of this show. 10, 9, 8, 7, on a global scale.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Whoosh.
Whoosh. It's a wrap. And that was my conversation with the sophisticated savage and Nkrumahist African futurist and CEO of Pidgen Music, Panji Anoff. Panji, thanks a lot.
Charlie, great to be with you.
It's great, man. Have a great weekend.
Charlie, thank you very much.
God bless.
Touch it.
#GTV Breakfast.